Everybody's favorite pose, Utkatasana. Starting from the ground up, Padabandha, if possible. Padabandha is much easier when the legs are straight, as in Tadasana, Samasthiti, tree pose, even when you're balancing on one leg. When the leg is straight, much easier to maintain Padabandha. We're going to try and stick with that foundational concept, even in chair pose. So we won't belabor this too much because we'll have talked about it a lot at this point. But if the feet are together and the knees are together, big toes are together, which is often how this posture is cued, this can be problematic, again, for women who have wider hips, not women who have wider hips, women that have any hips, women that have hips that are shaped like women's hips. Even if a person is not wide, it does not have a wide hip girdle, it just has to do with the femur, where the femur goes into the acetabulum. That can be problematic to have the toes together. You can see here the Q angle that happens. My hip points are here, my knees are farther in towards the midline of my body than my hip points, which means that when I come into Utkatasana, my knees are going to, my femur bones are going to be inadvertently internally rotating a bit, which is what we would also refer to as like knock-kneed. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and as a matter of fact, many of you know, if you are in Bikram, there is a sequence in Bikram, in awkward pose or Utkatasana, where the knees are intentionally knocked together. You will notice, however, that when that happens, the feet are farther apart. And in the Bikram sequence, he steps the feet apart before you go down into your Utkatasana. So I just want you to try different variations on for size, see what it feels like in your body, and bring that back for feedback for the group. We're going to fly through some of these postures when we have the in-person weekend on posture clinics when you're with me, and then you'll have an in-person weekend with Julia as well. So bring back how things are feeling in your body. Let's go over from the side a little bit about Utkatasana so that I can explain to you where there might be some limiting factors. So first thing is toes together, knees together could be problematic for women only because, again, internal rotation. So stepping that foot out to the side makes a bit more space here for this Utkatasana. Arms up over the head can also be challenging for people that don't have the mobility of the shoulder girdle, and it can also cause some compromising in the spine that we'll look at right here. So if I turn to the side, if I'm going down into Utkatasana, so here, how far my hips can come down with my knees and toes together has to do with almost only one thing, and that is the dorsiflexion of my ankle. So how far can I pull my big toes back towards my shin? When you go into Utkatasana, I am in toes together, knees together right now, come down. You see this angle here. My knees are coming forward of my toes. If I were to go any farther forward, my heels would come up off of the ground. Do we see this? So I'm hitting a compression point in my ankles. When you do that, you'll feel it in your body. So I encourage you to practice this. See where your compression point is. Boom. And wherever that is, that's as far as your legs are going to, as far as your hips are going to come down, just by bending your knees, because that's as far as the dorsiflexion of the ankle will allow the knees to come. I hope that's making sense. If you have questions, please let me know. If I separate the feet underneath of the hip points instead, and then go down, I get a little bit of depth as a consequence of that. I'd be curious to see what it looks like and feels like for men. Because I have to say, in all of the years of observation, I'm not entirely sure if the knees together for men versus feet apart makes as big of an impact as it does for women. Okay. What is the back doing? What is the spine doing in Utkatasana? So essentially you're going to try and keep the spine neutral. So this is, for all intents and purposes, it's a squat. So you want the spine to stay in neutral. We'll talk about what that looks like in training. The arms can come up overhead here. For a lot of people, they will either thrust the rib cage forward here or drop the head. Either one of those things is going to be a little bit problematic because it's going to compromise the integrity of the core of the body. So it's going to compromise the integrity of the spine. There are some options. For instance, if you're taking an eagle bind in Utkatasana, where you will come into a bit of a backward bend, particularly in the upper part of the back. Arms up overhead is going to lift the rib cage along with the shoulder girdle because of the scapulohumeral rhythm, how the scapula is attached to the rib cage. By virtue of doing that, and the farther you're cueing people to pull their arms back, the more you're going to get people into a bit of a back bend or extension of the thoracic spine. That's fine if it's intentional. Just note that when the spine is in flexion, as long as it is active flexion or active drawing in, the abdominal muscles are going to be working. If you're taking the spine into extension, it is much harder to keep the abdominal muscles engaged. So Utkatasana here, much easier to maintain the integrity through the center of the body than here. Do we see the difference? It also changes where the body weight is in the body. So come along with me for this one. Here, body weight is in the low belly, it's back in the butt. Here, I'm shifting the body weight a little bit forward, so over the middle of the thighs. So it's going to make a difference where people feel it in the quadriceps, in the butt, in the back, in the belly. There are a lot of refinement in Utkatasana. This is part of the reason that this is one of those postures that we could break down for ages and that you'll see a lot in classes, because kind of no way that you do it can be wrong. And it can be challenging in many, many different ways. You will see some people that can go kind of all the way here and still maintain their body upright. There's a lot going on there. We'll have to look at a couple of bodies that can potentially do that in training, because mine cannot. So it's going to be challenging for me to describe what's happening in that posture when that happens. So Padabandha and Utkatasana, we really want to think about that as much as we can. Again, it's going to be much easier when the legs are straight. If you're coming down, this takes an intense amount of focus and concentration, and I guarantee you it will make your practice stronger if you can get to a place where you can practice Padabandha during that posture. When we go into pranayama and energy lux and the subtle body, subtle anatomy, we're going to talk a lot about what happens energetically in Utkatasana. But for right now, structurally, it is a seemingly simple posture that can get infinitely complex. Practice, practice, practice. Let me know what questions you have.